Imagine you're running a business, putting your heart and soul into your product, but you're constantly facing diminishing margins due to unexpected costs and inefficiencies in your supply chain. What would you do to turn the tide and find a sustainable solution that not only cuts costs, but also contributes to a greener planet? Today, our guest is someone who has faced this very dilemma and turned it into an incredible opportunity. James Malley, the CEO and co-founder of Paccurate, went from stumbling into entrepreneurship to building a game-changing company that's revolutionizing the packing and shipping industry. We'll dive deep into James's journey of navigating the tumultuous world of startups, his actionable strategies for overcoming challenges, and the mission-driven approach that fuels Paccurate's success. In this episode, you'll discover the behind-the-scenes decisions, the hard-fought battles, and the emotional resilience that propelled James to transform his side hustle into a thriving, venture-backed business. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fulfillment podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulas, and this week, my guest is professional boxer, corrugated that is, the CEO and co-founder of Paccurate, James Malley. Welcome, James.
Hey, Dave. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely.
Paccurate is your company. So can you tell us how you became an entrepreneur?
Sure. I think I kind of just stumbled and fell face first into it. In around 2014, my now co-founder and I were doing consulting work for shippers and software providers and helping them build apps and integrations and things like that. And it was around that time that shippers were starting to notice their margins eroding from dimensional weight rating from UPS and FedEx. And the carriers had actually instituted this rating a couple years before this, but they were really starting to feel it. And so they said, "Hey, James, Pat, can you go find some cartonization software that actually works so we can solve this problem?" And so we looked around and didn't find anything and thought, well, it'd be cool as like a side hustle. We'll just build an algorithm and we'll put it out there and see what happens. So it was almost like a hobby at first, honestly. And then it continued as that and, slowly gathering SMB customers until the pandemic hit. And then all of a sudden we started getting big brands signing up to use it because they needed help with packing boxes. Yeah, so I would say the rest is history, but that's kind of how the company originated.
Okay. Wow. So you're doing consulting and you're working with shippers, and other software companies. So do you have a background in that, in that discipline?
Uh, Myself, I minored in computer science in school, but I was never a very good programmer. But I was always kind of fascinated with technology and supply chain tech in particular. But my co-founder Pat, I've actually known him for a very long time. We've been friends since middle school. Right after college, we just kind of hooked up and we're like, hey, let's build some stuff. And we just thought we would do some freelance work. And we had some twists and turns along the way, building, trying to start. At one point, we tried to start a for-profit fundraising platform, and we had some other kind of false starts, but always fell back to doing technology consulting work in the beginning.
Okay. So you have this need for cartonization with shippers coming to you and wanting to solve the dimensional weight problem. What was it like in terms of, you said, hey, let's see if we can build an algorithm and make it work. Like, were you able to create the algorithm and have it basically work right away? Was it that simple?
Definitely not. That feels like a layup question to give a leading question. It was not that simple. I will say my co-founder Pat, who's our CTO here, brilliant engineer and likes to think about things um, from the beginning, kind of from scratch. So we didn't take an open source algorithm or anything. We really built this thing from the ground up. It ended up being built in a way that was completely different from how warehouse management systems typically do cartonization, which, they try to find the smallest box that everything will fit in and instruct the user accordingly. We thought about it differently. We thought, well, the goal here is actually to reduce cost. So like volume is an important part of cost, but it's not the only thing. The carriers incentivize splitting shipments into multiple boxes or consolidating them into fewer, depending on where you're shipping something or the service type or the weight and all these things. And they express those incentives through your rate card, basically. And so it took us probably about a year to get a model that worked really quickly to be able to parse all those complex cost structures and incorporate them into the packing decision. So there was like a learning as we were trying to build this thing from scratch without making any assumptions. Um, but some of the first customers we got, like Lionel Trains, I don't know if you're a model train guy, but they were our first customer and they're still using it to this day. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not a train guy, but I know the company. I know the name. Um, okay, and so I read the explanation on your website too, as well as, right, this is practical, right? It's not just about the volume itself because, right, it may not fit in a certain size box. So you have to really have that extra dimension to ensure that it's practical and like the full dimensions fit in that carton. I mean, in hindsight, right, makes perfect sense and seems so simple, but does it surprise you that there was nothing like this already on the market?
yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning we assumed that people had this figured out somewhere. I think, cartonization or cubing, some people call it, has improved very slowly. And one of the reasons is that every shipper has an edge case pretty much. They've got something that's like unique to them. And so the challenge for WMS companies who typically have to have this functionality is it doesn't really make sense for them to invest in building a system that is flexible enough to accommodate everybody. So they take the approach of, well, let's make something pretty simple and then we'll just get the customers to pay us to customize it for them every time. So that's led to kind of like slow adoption, and shippers being like, well, this isn't working, but I really don't want to pay my WMS provider, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it's going to cost to make it work. So that's the kind of friction that we realized was keeping good cartonization from really proliferating.
Okay. So you have some modest success with it as a side hustle.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, the pandemic hits and things took off. Can you talk about what it was like at that time in terms of the demand and then specifically how your product helped shippers at that time?
Yeah, I think there were really two things going on. Fulfillment costs in general, as you know, just like shot up. So things that we used to kind of take for granted, not just carrier rates, although those did spike. There was all kinds of crazy surcharges as they were trying to handle all this new e-commerce volume. But things we kind of previously, or the industry kind of took as the cost of doing business, like the price of corrugated boxes, um, flew up just because of the supply chain issues that overseas, especially. It was just hard to get the raw material, hard to get the corrugate, and hard to honestly, manufacture the boxes. So there's all these prices going up. That caused a lot of shippers to take a step back and be like, okay, wait, these all these things in the last 100 feet of fulfillment that we figured we had locked down, do we really? Is there anything we can do to start chipping away at these costs? Because our margins are just getting completely blown away. Um, so that was going on. Simultaneous to that, e-commerce in general was blowing up. So you have um, a whole new set of people that maybe weren't e-commerce buyers before, you know, older generations as well as Gen Z coming in and taking over the e-com consumer base. And are a lot of them were unhappy and complaining to these brands about waste or damage. And so the issue of bad packing was suddenly more in the kind of public consciousness. And so it was really those two things that kind of set the stage for us to start growing.
Okay. And so when that happens and you have that aha moment, like, wow, this could really scale and be a business that takes off, like what happened next?
We panicked for a respectable amount of time. Started, calling around to, friends, family, anybody that would listen, saying, we need some help because we know we have an opportunity here, but we're just a couple of guys. We're a couple of like software guys. How do we, what does this look like as a business? And so we were lucky enough to have some an experienced senior sales guy come join us. He was going to retire because he'd had a very successful sales career. It's this guy named Steve Cooper, who did very well selling shipping systems over the last 20 years. And we're like, Steve, we know you want to retire, but we need your help. Can you just come come work with us until we figure out how to handle these larger opportunities? And so very grateful to him to have like a teacher kind of embedded in the company actually showing us how to sell.
Okay.
So yeah, that was the first thing.
Okay. And then how did you go about too, right? Because scaling and growing and selling, like how did you go about like funding the company and growing it from there?
Yeah, early days was, friends and family. And we still did some consulting on the side just to keep the lights on. Like we were still supporting some integrations that we had built, and we're still making like residual recurring revenue on. Um, it wasn't really until maybe 2021 that we were making enough and um, had enough friends and family money to kind of leave that behind and focus solely on Paccurate, the product. And then 2022 is when we raised our first venture capital round, and it was a pre-seed round.
Winning deals is as simple as the sales tools that you use. Pipedrive's easy and effective CRM lets you track your sales pipeline, manage deals, and automate the whole process so you can focus on one thing, selling. Join over 100,000 users worldwide driving business growth with Pipedrive. Customize your pipeline to match your unique sales process, sharpen your strategy with real-time performance insights, and centralize data from over 500 sales tools that you know and love. Make smarter, faster decisions with Pipedrive's AI sales assistant and win up to 3 times more deals with smart automations. Getting started takes minutes. Try Pipedrive today for free and unlock real results from day one.
Okay. And so, coming from someone software background, consultant, you create this product almost by accident, right? And now it really takes off. You get funding, you have a senior sales guy teaching you, showing you the ropes, and now you're pitching institutional investors. So what was it like learning how to navigate that world?
It was brutal. I'm not gonna lie. It was you know, I didn't know what investors wanted to see. I knew how to write a business plan, but I didn't know where all the gotchas were or, the difference between a normal business and a venture backable kind of business. Um, and so, pitched 100 probably funds and was lucky enough to get the attention of a fund in Denver called Springtime Ventures, and the partner there, his name's Matt Blumstead. He was like, "Yeah, this is it's interesting. You guys are growing, and there's a sustainability angle that I like. Let me talk to your customers. And I'm very thankful that he asked to do that, because after he talked to our customers and heard how happy they were with, and they were we were very committed to them. So we spent a lot of time with our customers and developed relationships. And so I think it was really our customers that were the ones that actually got us a very interested investor. Um, and so if we didn't have customers yet, there's no way I could have raised that first round. It was really, we needed the proof point, I think, for somebody to get confident. And so Matt from Springtime actually was like, became really passionate about Paccurate and helped fill out the rest of the round by bringing in other funds.
Okay. So when, like you said, you had happy customers. I mean, coming from, this is like your first real company you're scaling and learning all this stuff on the fly and through the chaos of the pandemic and all that. I mean, was in terms of like it just seems that, even for me, right, it seems natural that you want your customers to be happy, and that's just automatic. I mean, did you know at the time, right? Like, was that just something too where the whole purpose is you want a happy customer, so you're going to go the extra mile for them?
I think that might be attributing too much foresight. It was more just like, we really wanted this thing to work, because we at that point we had seen not just that there was like a really great ROI for our customers, but we did the math on the green impact. Like, how many acres of corrugated could we reduce, or how many trucks could we take off the road over time, based on making these packages more efficient. And so at that point, it was like a very, we were like in the full on in the mission driven realm. And so the relationships with the customers, very, very hands on, wanting to make sure not just that it worked, but that they loved it. And I think that just came from, we wanted everybody to love it as much as we did. I think now, founders, especially ones that go through like YC or something, they have maxims like, do things that don't scale, like this, spend extra time with the customer, go on site, give them the white glove treatment. These aren't, principles that we knew at the time, because we were just, guys trying to make something work. But as time has passed, I've kind of looked back and realized that that's something that we accidentally did well.
Okay. And when you're building this and throughout that whole process too, is there, because at that time too, right, like you said, prices shot up, e-commerce spiked incredibly, like overnight, with everything being locked down and people not knowing what was going to happen. Was there other competition too, kind of in this same in this same field?
Not really. I mean, they're definitely competitors. There's some legacy load planning software. So if you picture, sitting at a computer with a screen that has a virtual trailer on it, and you're dragging virtual pallets in to try to plan out how a truckload is going to go. Some of the vendors that provided software like that had released cartonization versions, and APIs and things like that, so that people could try to improve this area. But we haven't, and to this day, don't run into competitors a lot. And I think part of the reason is it's a huge market. I mean, there's just bill billions of packages uh, shipped around the world every year. Um, and this problem hasn't become quite so painful until the last couple of years. Um, so yeah, there were some competitors out there, but I think we were thinking about it differently enough early on that we were able to stand out.
Okay. And another thing too, you mentioned the mission driven, but portion of it in terms of reducing waste and all that. Like how much of how important is that to the company?
I mean, it's our whole purpose. And I talk to the team about this sometimes, but our purpose is to make the supply chain less wasteful, and we do that through spatial efficiency. That's our purpose. The fact that we're a venture-backed startup is kind of the vehicle that helps us, you know, drive toward that purpose, which might outlive us. Um, and I think it is a when things are hard, like if something doesn't go well, if you lose a deal, or if you're struggling to do anything, if you can in the back of your mind fall back on a purpose that is permanent, that will probably outlive you or hopefully outlive you with the company, um, it makes it a lot easier to kind of suffer the ups and downs.
Yeah, and glad you brought that up because that's one part of entrepreneurship. Clearly, there's going to be ups and downs and all sorts of unexpected landmines, so to speak, that you don't see coming. Was there any part or any point in time during the journey where you thought about giving up?
Oh sure. Yeah. Especially the the time. So in the beginning, we were like, oh, this is a nice side hustle. We can't give up our day job. And then now we're, venture backed, growing pretty fast. The time between when we believed in our hearts that this was had to be our mission to create a company around this, but we weren't getting traction or attention that we needed to really do it. That was the most grueling period. We were out there pitching WMS companies, and they were like, "Who are you? What are these little whippersnappers talking about? We already have cartonization." Um, you know, it was for a long time. Packing efficiency was not, even though we got a burst of customers during the pandemic, it was not like a top three priority. So even if we got somebody's interest, we would have what we called phase two itis. So like, yeah, this is great. We'll do it in phase two, and then that would never come. So there was plenty of frustration and doubt. I had plenty of doubts about. I never doubted my co-founder because he's just he was the best man at my wedding. So one of my favorite people, but also one of the smartest people I know, and continues to innovate. But I've always had a lot of self-doubt. Like, I believe in this, but am I the guy? Am I the guy that can be CEO and grow a business here? Um, so yeah, I mean, I think the what is the joke about going between failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm? The kind of quirkiness of the entrepreneur that you have to get punched in the face and then turn around and say, "Yes, I'll have another." Yeah,
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to talk about that when you're on the other side and you have success and you can kind of look back and laugh about stuff like that. But at the time, like you said, where you believe in this, but there's not the traction, you're not seeing the results, you're having and right, the human mind will just attack you with all
yeah.
those limiting beliefs, negative thoughts. Like when you're in the middle of that, how did you keep going day after day?
Um, I mean, my wife played a huge role in me being able to get through it. Being an entrepreneur, especially if you don't come up in a community of them, like, a lot of Silicon Valley founders have like good networks, good support systems, other founders. Um, Being in New York and in supply chain, not really connected up with uh, any founders my age, um, extremely lonely. Like, none of your friends, if they've never tried to start a business, really understand what you go through on a daily basis. Um, and it's not their fault, but it can make for some loneliness to feel like you're kind of alone. Nobody understands the pressure, and you can't complain about it because you're in a position to maybe try it. Um, so I leaned a lot on family, and in particular, my wife was just unfailingly supportive as we try to get things rolling.
Okay. And so, like you said, consulting background, and software guy. how did you make the transition to being a CEO and being responsible for like building a team and managing all these different departments and all the things you have to do as the leader of a company?
Yeah, I think if I could say I'm good at anything, it's asking for help. So I am I have always been extremely reliant on mentors to help, and I have some amazing ones. And and thankfully that trend continued after we started raising venture capital. So we've done three VC rounds. We did the pre-seed in 2022, the seed last year, and the Series A most recently this year. I'm not sure how, but we've always ended up with investors and board members that are interested in the business and interested in helping. Um, and so every time the company takes another step forward, grows, there's a new chapter where we're a new headcount or trying to do something slightly differently, I have to kind of relearn my job. And it's just been that way since the beginning. And I never know, is there going to be a phase of the business where I'm not the guy for the business at that point? Um, it may happen someday, and just like making peace with that and just saying, I'm the guy right now, and I'm just going to do the best I can right now. And when the time comes to grow again, I will try to be that guy. But if I'm not, I've got to be the first one to kind of raise my hand and say, maybe the company's outgrown me.
And how, that's great perspective to have that mindset and that I guess lack of ego, so to speak, to even be aware of that. But how do you tell? Like as you like you said, you have to continually relearn your job, and each one of these new levels of growth is demanding new, I guess, new versions of you. Like how do you assess like how you're performing, in the middle of that?
Um, well, I think like, there's the basic stuff, which is you say you're gonna hit some target and you do or you don't. That's pretty fundamental, but can't always get it right. Um, but I think in the context of team building, if I'm still, as long as I'm able to find the perfect people for roles, especially leadership roles, and they are able to achieve and seem energized by your guidance, um, and not frustrated, I think you could be in worse shape. Those are really the things that I've seen, where when the company's doing well, it's because leadership is all like talking to each other. They feel like they have everything they need in order to succeed. Um, so I think if we get to a point, I don't know if I'm a CEO of a 500 person company, because it's very different. There's like, politics, there's all, there's different concerns. Um, so that's my take on it. I think I'm pretty good at hiring people that are smarter than me. That's my secret.
That's your secret.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what does the company look like present day?
There are 21 of us today, and we've got a few open roles, so we'll be 23 within the next few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as far as you've come building this, like what's next for you in the coming year?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of success with partnerships. So next year, really doubling down on that. We recently hired a partnerships leader to come in, a very experienced guy in the space. He used to sell AMR robotics. Um, and so really doubling down on the things that we've found on a smaller budget have worked really well. And just trying to do them more methodically instead of as like a when we have time kind of thing. Um, that's really what I'm excited about going into next year. We also get to do, it's nice raising venture capital because you can do, trade shows that are otherwise, prohibitively expensive for a startup. So we get a little booth at most of the supply chain shows next year.
Okay. All right. And James, if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about Paccurate, what's the best way they can reach out to you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, James Malley. My invites are open. I'm always happy to connect and chat. Paccurate, you can find it paccurate.io. That's our website.
All right. And we'll link all that in the show notes for everyone. All right. Well, James, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, sharing your story. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Dave. This was awesome.
All right. And that is all the time we have for now. We will see you next time.